This is Naval Station Rambilli, on India's eastern coast, a massive naval facility widely associated with the secretive development known as Project Varsha. From above, the scale of what India is building here is hard to miss. New piers extended into the water, large sections of the coastline have been transformed, and there are signs of what may be extensive dredging. But the most interesting part of this facility isn't along the coast, it's in this mountain. Looking closely at satellite imagery, I found at least 15 locations around it that appear to be entrances leading directly into the hillside. Some are subtle, others are massive concrete excavations with roads running straight toward them. So what exactly is India building inside this mountain? And why does one of the country's most secretive naval projects appear to be going underground? This is the naval base at the heart of Project Varsha. Before we start examining what's actually being built here, it helps to understand why this location matters. Rambilli sits along India's eastern coast, roughly 50 kilometers south of Visakhapatnam, which is home to the headquarters of India's Eastern Naval Command and one of the country's most important naval hubs. But rather than relying only on reports, we can actually watch much of this facility take shape from above. And when you look closely at the satellite imagery, three parts of the construction immediately stand out. First, there are major changes along the shoreline that appear consistent with dredging and harbor expansion. Second, several large piers and other marine structures have been built out into the water. And third, and by far the most unusual, are the numerous locations where roads and excavations appear to lead directly into the surrounding mountain. So let's start along the coastline and work our way inland. Here's the location in about 2018. You can see this island is still here. By 2019, they've completely removed it. And if you go back a year, you can see some kind of ship out here doing some kind of work. And this is 1 year before they removed that island. And you can even see here, look at all the mud that this ship is bringing up. I wonder if this is the dredging boat right here. As you keep going on in the years prior to 2019, start to see it. So in this year, you can see there's still that boat. It's still kind of muddy and murky. I'm not sure what this is out here, but it gets really interesting in the coming years. See all that mud being brought up? That's not caused out here by the shoreline or anything like that. That's made and created right here. This is one of the most telling in my opinion. It looks like either it came through the dirt or it started dredging right out here and is making its way in to, kind of clear out the center divider of this little entryway here. Because this is supposed to be a submarine base, so the subs are going to come in here and it needs to be deep enough for them. By 2020, that island's gone, and it looks like they started to build the piers out here, so this must be deep enough by then. The next interesting part is the construction of the piers. This is 2017, and you're going to see in the future that this whole thing is removed right here. This is all extended out. This bit of land is cut right up to here and replaced with a pier. So let's just get into that real quick. So 2017, 2025, you can see the difference there. And I'll do it a couple more times so you can look at different places. Watch this whole island disappear. Look how far that came out. 2025, gone. And they filled in these things with gravel piers, it looked like. I don't know if things are going to be built on top of that or what's going to come of these, but I can only call those piers. Do that again. Now see this side, this whole area right here is going to be removed. Boom, it's straightened out. And they've started to put in maybe a dock. And even look back in here. This is interesting too. 2017, look how much they've cut that island off. Boom. They've rounded it and added piers in here. That's crazy. Look how much it's changed. This thing's completely gone. This is all widened out. Look how narrow this channel used to be. Boom. They've substantially increased that. Now a submarine can come right up in here. I think that this is going to be the entrance right here. That'd be my guess. Comes in, turns around, and goes directly in here. And this is more for ships and whatnot. You can really see the difference there. And out here on the front as well. Nothing out here. And all of a sudden, 2025, they're extending and building piers out into here. Let's get a closer look. Nothing. Look at all that work. And now the entrances. Here in 2013, March of 2013, there's not anything going on here. And each one of these markers is a possible entrance that I found in the future. And you're going to see them all kind of pop into play here. So 2013, this is now October of that same year. Look at all the work they've done. And I'll give you my hypothesis. I think that this is their initial base, and they've extended whatever they're doing in here, they've extended into this part of the mountain here. See that? And you may disagree. That's okay. I'd love to know what you think that is. But to me, that looks like something that goes right into this mountain here. And as we go through the years, it'll become more apparent. Look at that cut. Look at that wall right there. Look how deep that is. One right here as well. And look, and they've got it's walled off, and it gets even more walled off in the future. Another one, you can kind of see some like concrete entranceways. Now I think there's one at the back here. I just couldn't get a good picture of it. Let's move forward a little bit. Again, and as we move through, watch the construction that starts along these dots right here from what's already here. Let's get a good 3D look as well. You can see that. See, I think this is the first section of the base they put in 2013. And over the years, they're going to move it into here as well. Let's move forward. There's some good shadows on that. You see how tall that wall is? Look at it there. Walled off. Covered. Boom. I think that goes right in. They've cut that. Wait for the satellite image angle to change as well. And we'll see a little bit more. Here's 2014. You can see that that's now completely walled off with a dirt road going directly into it, dead end into it. There's a real good look at it. You see it right there? Now the angle has changed a little bit, and you can see some kind of entrance. I don't think that's a warehouse. Look at it there. So they've completely uncovered it, and there's even something now going on here and here. Look at those cuts into the mountain right there. Those are very used roads that just end right there. That doesn't make sense. Because if it, it'd be tough for them to back out of here. It's almost like you have to go in here, turn around, and come back out. There you can get there's a good lip right there. See that? Kind of see what's going on back here, though. This one makes the least sense, unless that's it right there. Look at those. Something's going on here. And now they've started to make roads out into here, as if they're going to extend out there, or maybe that's for future plans. See, they've now paved this road throughout here. You get the idea. You get a good look at what those could be right there. What do you think? Do you think that is just a warehouse? Some kind of storage? But, how do you explain that? See that road, and it just abruptly stops right there. If a big truck was to come in and turn around right here, it'd be pretty hard for it to back out and turn its tail down into here. And it almost like those roads are so well traveled that it has to go inside and turn around. Now you get the idea of what's going on over here. I think this is their first facility. Now let's take a look at this. Let's watch this kind of come into play. Take note of all the dots, and let's kind of speed up the process. And you can see. So look, there's 2 years ahead, 2019. Look what they've done here. I think these are maybe test drilling, like they get up on top and drill down to see what this is made up of all along the mountain so they can dig safely. But let's start to go back in time now. Go back to 2017, nothing, okay? So September 2013, they've started to move along here. And you can see some of the stuff was already put in. Now, they're very rough looking at this point. And they're going to move their way all the way along here. Look how much this changed. So they now have a road around the whole thing. Let's get to some clear imagery. You can see them now. But here's in 2025. And you see the shadow? That's hard to explain. Again, a well-used road into a concrete part of this mountain. And there's a good angle on one right there. That doesn't seem like a warehouse, you know? And look, we have two more. It's almost like that's a roofed entrance right there. Maybe for hand miners? I don't know. I'd love to know if you have any information on this or you've been studying the same spot. What do you think these are? Look at that. You can almost see the round entrance right there. And we saw the one up front. I mean, you can't, that's definitely something right there. You can see the cut and then the second cut right there. Some kind of roofed thing going on here. Again, where do you turn the stuff around? You know, all the vehicles doing all this, where do they turn around? It almost seems like that's the concrete or some kind of roof, and this is a cloth to cover the main entrance. So you can't tell. Again, right there, look at the shadow. Oh, from that overhang right there. That's giant. I think this is another one. And you get a real good look at the back one right there. See the slit? So it's almost as if this is what was started here. And we'll go back to maybe 2014. Again, now look at the change there. So we'll go back and boom. Look at it. Look at how much change has taken place here. Each one of those is a possible entrance dotted along here. 2014, nothing is there. So it's almost as if this is the first input of it, because in earlier 2013, there's nothing here. That image is March 2013, and by October that same year, they've done all this work. So to reiterate, I think this is the first portion, and then this is the second portion, meaning this whole thing right here is underground. And from what we learned from other facilities, maybe this is for sensitive material. You need shielding and protection from bombs. And as you see, we'll get into the documents, they're scared of China. So this is them trying to prepare for that. What makes what we're seeing today especially interesting is that plans for these features were being reported more than a decade ago. In 2013, the Times of India reported that a new naval base was beginning to take shape. The report described plans for underground pens or bunkers intended to protect nuclear submarines, along with tunnels, jetties, depots, and other support facilities. So years before much of this construction was visible, many of the same features we're looking at today were already being discussed. And this wasn't simply a project appearing in newspaper reports. Indian government planning documents for this coastal region specifically identify both the existing naval base and a proposed alternative. The document doesn't reveal the sensitive details of what was being constructed, but it helps establish the official paper trail for a major new naval facility being developed along this part of India's eastern coast. But this government document is where things become much more interesting. It references the diversion of more than 676 hectares of forest land for naval development, and discusses areas intended for things like a strategic technical area and command and control facilities. But buried inside the document is a particularly important detail. Officials specifically distinguish between areas where surface construction was proposed and areas where underground activities were proposed. So while satellite imagery alone can't tell us exactly what lies behind each of the openings we've identified, we don't have to speculate about whether underground construction was part of the plan. India's own government documents tell us that it was. By 2018, satellite imagery was already beginning to reveal just how extensive some of this underground work may have been. The print reported that open-source satellite images showed more than a dozen tunnels being excavated as part of the first phase of the project, along with extensive underground storage facilities. That report is particularly interesting when compared with what we can see today. Years later, many of these areas have developed into substantial structures, with roads running directly toward what appear to be portals in the hillside. It doesn't prove that every opening we've identified is part of one connected tunnel system, but it does provide important context for what we're seeing. And more recent government records give us something else, an official name for the facility. This 2024 Government of India tender specifically identifies the location as Naval Station Rambilli. The tender itself deals with additional administrative and logistical infrastructure being constructed at the station, showing that development here has gone well beyond just tunnels and a harbor. Rambilli is being built into a much larger, permanent naval installation. And to understand why India would invest so heavily in a facility like this, we have to look at what's happening with its submarine fleet. In August of 2024, India officially commissioned the country's second ballistic missile submarine. India's Ministry of Defense explicitly described the two subs as strengthening the country's nuclear triad and nuclear deterrent. And that puts Project Varsha into a much larger strategic picture. India is expanding a submarine force designed to carry part of its nuclear deterrent at sea, while at the same time developing a heavily protected naval facility just down the coast. And finally, we have one of the most recent detailed reports on the subject. In April of 2025, the Times of India reported that the first phase of the base was almost complete and described the facility as having underground submarine pens and a network of tunnels. But the report also gives us an interesting comparison for what we're seeing along the coastline. It said the inner harbor was already complete, while construction continued on the outer harbor, including breakwaters and jetties. Looking at the imagery today, the description lines up remarkably well with the massive marine construction we've just examined. The protected harbor, the new piers, and the continued transformation of the shoreline. At that time, the report said the base was expected to be commissioned in 2026. After looking at the satellite imagery and the documents, one thing is clear. This is no ordinary naval construction project. The scale of what's being built at Rambilli is enormous. New piers, major changes to the coastline, what appears to be extensive dredging, and numerous apparent entrances cut directly into the surrounding mountain. And the documents make those observations even more significant. Indian government records confirms underground activity was planned here, while years of reporting describes tunnels, underground submarine facilities, and harbor construction that closely match what we can see from above. What we still don't know is exactly what lies behind each of these entrances, how extensive the underground network really is, or whether all these openings are connected. For now, much of Project Varsha remains hidden beneath the mountain, but satellite imagery gives us a rare look at just how massive this secretive naval facility has become. I linked a book in the description, a quiet cosmic horror story about a janitor who finds a forgotten signal fragment called Zero Alpha. The signal leads him to a buried structure deep in the woods, something ancient, seamless, and not meant for human contact. When it wakes, it does not understand him, but it does classify him, and once the sweep starts, there's nowhere left to hide. Or maybe you're interested in Albatross by Greg Potter. A brilliant Silicon Valley inventor is pulled into a hidden battle over lost alien technology with the power to reshape the world. With the help of a gifted psychic, he must master its secrets before shadowy forces use it to control one of Earth's most vital resources. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed exploring Project Varsha and Naval Station Rambilli from above. Let me know what stood out to you the most. From the massive harbor construction and possible dredging, to the numerous apparent entrances cut into the mountain or the government documents to go along. And if you have another strange, overlooked, or hard to explain location you want investigated, drop a pin on the community map or leave a comment below. All links in the description. Stay above it and take care. Bye.